So, as you can see,
Too loud, I mean, it can be heard from there. I'm going to leave the door open so there's.
I think it's
one.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I project, so it probably should not. It's
Alrighty.
probably not gonna be a problem. So thanks for coming to see me. As you can see, my name's Julie Kavanaugh. I'm the diplomat in residence for the state of Texas. What that means is I am an active duty career foreign service officer. We have 16 diplomats in residence around the country. And really what our purpose in life is as a diplomat in residence is to recruit the next generation of diplomats, civil servants for the Department of State, so both diplomats and civil servants. And I'll go through with you what that means. A secondary function is to help audiences understand what it is that the State Department does, why we are important. For some audiences, they don't really even recognize that the State Department is part of the federal government. They think, State Department, what state? Or what department of the state of Texas? So it's to help audiences understand that. You all are pretty savvy, so I think you probably do know that we are the federal government and we're the primary agency for the federal government that conducts foreign policy. We develop and we implement foreign policy. Hi, great.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're just getting started here. As you can see, I do have a family, and I'm happy to answer questions during this presentation about different aspects of the State Department. So as I said, I'm a career foreign service officer. When you think about careers in the Department of State, think about them in two big groups. So think about them, we've got civil service and we have foreign service. So civil service personnel are those people who work for the Department of State and they do it domestically. They work here in the United States, primarily in Washington, D.C. We do have some offices around the country. How many of you have a U.S. passport? Okay, so your passport was issued by the Department of State, most likely at the passport agency in Houston or in Dallas, and those are staffed by civil service. That being said, most of the jobs are in Washington, D.C., and that's the reality. Now, skill sets within the civil service are going to range all the way from administrative and clerical, IT support, all the way to attorneys and people who can negotiate international treaties. It's the whole range of skills in the civil service. Foreign service is the second big group of careers in the State Department. Foreign service are those people who join a program, a foreign service, and go overseas to staff our embassies and our consulates overseas. Most of the career is spent overseas. You move every 2 to 3 years. You may come back to Washington for an assignment and then you go back overseas again. So it's really important that you understand the distinction between civil and foreign service, because civil service, you're gonna be in one place and you're gonna go home at the end of the day and you're gonna be living in the United States and your family's gonna stay there with you. Foreign service, you're gonna haul your family around the world. And so when you're looking at job applications, it's important that you know the difference, because there is a big difference. As you can see, I'm foreign service and I do have a family. My husband is a recently retired foreign service officer. We are what is called a tandem couple. So about, I would say anecdotally, about maybe 30 to 40% of the foreign service are now parts of tandem couples, where both members of the couple are in fact in the foreign service. We have raised 2.5 kids in the foreign service. I say 2.5 because this little one here is now 13. She's in 8th grade. Middle school drama has begun, so the jury is still out on her, but in general, we're well on our way to having raised 3 kids. Incidentally, my son is a senior at Trinity University in San Antonio. He is a Mandarin major, and he has already started and actually succeeded in a couple of the steps testing into the State Department. And so it is something that's definitely really accessible to you as a student. I think I covered all that. So I guess I'll have to share the slideshow with you online. You can see for yourselves where I come from. If you watch the movies or you read certain things, there's this mystique about the Foreign Service, about diplomacy, that it's evening gowns and champagne glasses and we whisk off in our helicopters like James Bond. It's not the case. You do not have to be part of the East Coast elite to be a Foreign Service officer. You do not have to be part of the California elite to be a Foreign Service officer. I grew up in steel country, in a county where unemployment was often double what it was elsewhere in the country because it was the 70s and steel was hard hit. My mother did not finish college. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. We are not looking for a specific pedigree. We are not looking even for a specific degree or a specific institution. What we are looking for, as we talk about the Foreign Service, are people who have 13 dimensions. I'm not going to go through all of those dimensions today because I will bore you, and I'm going to make you do a little bit of research. If you're really interested, you'll find out what they are. Some of them to highlight: leadership skills, managerial skills, communication skills, interpersonal skills. No jerks allowed because we're diplomats. We want you to get along with other people. Interpersonal skills are important. When I look at the 13 dimensions, I actually look at them and I think, wow, these would make, if you have all of these, you're going to be a dynamite professional regardless of what profession you choose. So my unsolicited life advice to you is look at the 13 dimensions. Develop yourself in all of those areas because it's only going to serve you well. Look at them, do self-reflection, think about where am I strong, where am I weak, and pursue things that help strengthen you in the places that you are lacking. It's just really good, helpful guidelines to think about how you can grow and also how you can frame your own experiences and your skills. This is where I have served. So it goes backwards in time. This is starting most recently before coming to Texas and then going back. My first assignment was in Rio. Notice I use the word served. Yes.
I am from Rio.
Oh.
Yes.
Fala português?
Falo português. Você aprendeu português lá?
Falava português faz 30 anos, não falo português. Me esqueci tudo. But that was my first assignment.
Okay.
Yes. Notice I use the word served. I use this word very purposefully because if you ask most people in the Foreign Service where they've worked, they're gonna go, well, I worked at a telemarketing company selling baby Jesus dolls on the phone. I was a salad bar attendant at the Western Sizzle Steakhouse, and then I became a diplomat. Because we don't talk about our individual assignments as where we worked. It's where we served. Because this is what we do. It's a hugely important element of the State Department, is that public service aspect. Just some examples to make it real for you so you understand what we are talking about. Some of the things that I have worked on: I was the senior officer in charge of the U.S. government presence during Sochi Olympics. We had 150 U.S. government personnel in Sochi, protecting the athletes, doing counterterrorism work, counterintelligence, assisting U.S. citizens there, figuring out, working collectively with our international partners to figure out what we would do if there was a major crisis like a terrorist event or an earthquake. And thankfully there were neither during the games. Now, I worked really hard during that, but I did have the opportunity to purchase a ticket and go watch the U.S. win a medal in team figure skating, which was really fun. Some other things that I've worked on. Oh wait, sorry. This was a crash of Singapore Airlines. Crashed in Taipei on its way to Los Angeles. We had 83 American citizens on board, 27 of whom were killed. I ran the crisis center for that. And we had to make notification phone calls to family members that their family members had passed away in the crash. We helped with identification of remains, shipment of remains. Survivors were in burn units and elsewhere, so we were helping them as well. This is an earthquake in central Taiwan. Now, I'm from northern Ohio. We do not have earthquakes. We have tornadoes, we have snowstorms. My very first, have any of you experienced an earthquake? Okay, my very first earthquake was a 7.6.
Wow.
It was terrifying, I have to tell you. So I went into, we felt it at about a 5.8 in Taipei, and that was terrifying. The epicenter, this is the epicenter, was 7.6. So we went into the epicenter looking for US citizens in the aftermath of this earthquake because we had their addresses, and we went looking to find out, is the building still standing? Can we find them? Do they need help, etc., tracking them down. Now, don't mistake, we are not search and rescue. So we were not digging through the rubble. This was maybe 2 days after search and rescue had been in, but our job is to make sure that we can link up our citizens with local resources, that we can communicate to their family back in the United States if need be, that we can help them get financial assistance if they need it, and really help them in the aftermath of a crisis like this. My first assignment in Rio. So I went to Rio, I was 24 years old when I joined the Foreign Service, and I went off to my first assignment. If you are interested in joining the Foreign Service as a Foreign Service officer or becoming a consular fellow, and we can talk about that, this is very typical. You're gonna go, everyone is going to join the Foreign Service as an officer and go and do consular work in a place around the world, at least one if not 2 assignments. Consular work, what is that? Number one, it's the provision of visa services to foreign nationals who want to come to the United States, who either want to come temporarily or want to move and immigrate to the United States. And the other half of consular work is providing assistance to US citizens overseas. So the skill set here is a combination of like business management and operational management because you're running an operation, and then social services, providing assistance to US citizens. My first time to be duty officer in my career was in Rio, and it was during Carnival. And what happens, what's a duty officer? It's when consulate's closed, phone call comes in to the Marine Guard, standing duty. It's not a routine call, needs action. He or she passes it to the duty officer, and you have to take action. You have to figure out what to do. Now in Rio, as you know, during Carnival, everything closes down. So the consulate, it wasn't just a day that I was duty. It was, I don't know, it felt like 10 days. I don't know if it was that long, but it sure felt like it. And as you can imagine, US citizens in Rio de Janeiro during Carnival can get themselves into a bit of trouble occasionally. So at the time, I was the only American Citizen Services officer at the consulate. So when the duty phone rang, I had nobody to call but myself. And so I had to go and I had to fix these things. I had to help people, I had to resolve all these problems. And so, you know, I saw the inside of a public hospital, I was in a police station. Nobody died that week, thank goodness. But you have to figure out how to do this. And this was my very first assignment. And the reason I'm focusing on this is because it speaks to the testing process that we have. Why the testing process is the way it is. Because we're looking for people who have the skills, the judgment to be able to handle this stuff. There's no manual that tells you when an elderly American citizen is found drugged on the sidewalk in Copacabana and has been robbed, what you should do with him, and he's unconscious, what you should do with him. You have to figure it out. And that's why we have this testing process, is because we're going to be looking for people who have those 13 dimensions to be able to do the job. And then just finally on my career, this is just, again, this is to help illustrate for you what it means to be in the Foreign Service. So my last assignment before coming to Texas was to be Minister Counselor for Consular Affairs in Beijing. And for the last 6 months, I was also the acting Deputy Chief of Mission for Mission China. That's the number 2 in the embassy. We have about 2,400 people in China. Now, I want you to look at these figures. So as Minister Counselor for Consular Affairs, remember consular work, visas and services to US citizens, right? So I had 600 employees working for me $50 million operating budget, about $500 million coming in service fees. Now, you can see those numbers, but I want you to think for a second what that means. What it really means is in Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, in each of those 3 places, every single day in each place, at about 3,500 to 4,000 Chinese nationals walk in every single day and apply for a visa. 90% of them spend less than an hour in the facility. Now, think about what it takes to accomplish that, and you will start to get a picture of the variety of jobs that we have in the State Department. So, you need a building, right? That building needs to have been constructed properly, so we need architects, we need construction engineers who supervise the projects as embassies are being built. You need security to make sure that those 4,000 people per day come in, are properly screened, cannot do you harm. Somebody needs to manage the local guards who are doing that. A U.S. citizen guard, U.S. citizen law enforcement officer is going to be managing those guards and the contracts. The visa applicant comes into the embassy. They have to scan their 10 fingerprints. So you have to have computers to be able to scan the fingerprints, right? Those fingerprints then are carried back to be checked against the FBI database. And then the results are returned to the embassy in the amount of time it takes that applicant to go from scanning fingerprints here to walking over here to have a visa interview. How do you do that? You have to have bandwidth for that to happen, and people who negotiate the purchase of bandwidth. And sometimes it's easier than others, depending on what country you're in. And people who maintain those systems. Those systems are going to melt down if the air conditioners in your facility are not functioning properly. So you need facilities managers. You need officers to interview the visa applicants and make decisions. So they have to speak Mandarin. So you need teachers. They have to be properly trained. They need supervisors who look over their shoulder and make sure they are making the right decisions. These officers are going to move every 2 to 3 years. Somebody's got to get them their stuff, right? Ship your household effects, make sure there's housing for them to live in, make sure there's schooling for the children, make sure that there's someone there who can help them navigate the local medical system, right? So you need someone who is in Washington developing the policy to interpret visa law. How is that going to play out to make good visa decisions? Okay, and we're only talking right now about a visa section with 4,000 visa applicants. Expand that to include U.S. citizen services. Expand that to do that worldwide at 275 posts around the world. Oh, by the way, this all costs money. You need financial managers, right? 275 posts in the world, plus Washington, D.C. And that's only talking about consular work. We haven't even begun to talk about negotiating with China over North Korea, or discussing trade challenges with China, between China and the United States, okay? So when you think about the State Department, expand your view of the skill sets that are needed and the opportunities that there are for you. So if you're somebody who is really interested in business, study business. And you're globally engaged, come into the State Department and apply your business skills. Operational management, logistics, financial management, human resources, okay? If you're interested in, I'm a liberal arts major, I'm interested in international affairs. I was running an operation with 600 employees and applying business skills. So you can do this in the State Department with this broad array of interests that you might have. Okay, so this is what it's about, public service. It's super, super interesting, by the way. It really is. Every single day is different. Okay, so how can you join the State Department? I'm going to talk about these 4 areas: student programs, consular fellows, civil service, and foreign service. Anytime you do research about any of this stuff, the place to start is at careers.state.gov. You should feel free to take pictures of this or take notes, whatever. On that web page, at the very top, there's a Keep Me Informed feature. I would encourage you to click on that, put your email address in, and then click on the different things that are of interest to you, because those will get you automatic notifications of job postings. And that way you don't have to go in and check. Some of our opportunities, the information on this webpage will lead you to the U.S. government's USA Jobs platform. Is anybody familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, so you're gonna always start here. It may lead you to USA Jobs, and I'm sorry, I cannot do anything about USA Jobs. It's owned and run by the Office of Personnel Management. State Department doesn't own it. It's not very easy. It is what it is. I cannot do anything about that, I'm sorry. But you're gonna start here. Okay, so student programs. First of all, we do offer internships. Most of our internships are unpaid because that's how it works in the government and public policy arena. Look at it as if, we're saving you, the taxpayers, some money by not paying you for your internship. We accept applications very, very early. So for summer internships, the application period is September. Now you have to be a student both before and after the internship. So if you are going to graduate, say you're a person who will graduate in May, you would not be eligible for a summer internship after that May graduation unless you already have a formal fall program lined up. Has anyone in here applied for any internships with the State Department? Okay, I just talked at the career fair this morning to a student here who just spent her summer at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico as an unpaid intern through the Department of State. She was raving about it to everyone and anyone that would listen to her at the job fair because it was a really terrific experience for her. These are really substantive opportunities. If you go to an embassy overseas, you're essentially going to be doing entry-level diplomatic work. We're gonna put you to work. If you do not want, and we offer these in fall and spring semesters as well, again, advertised really far in advance, because if you're selected, you have to get a security clearance. So the next round will be for fall 2019, and those are gonna be due this coming March. If you don't wanna do that, or you missed it, or you can't do it, or if you're like me and you can't afford to do it in the summertime for unpaid and you have to have a job, because I get that. I could never have done this when I was in college. And furthermore, my parents would have been like, this is slave labor, why are you gonna take an unpaid internship? Try this one, Virtual Student Federal Service. This is a very, very underappreciated program. Every July, the US government publishes online a list of projects that students can apply to work for. It's not just State Department. We started it, it has now really expanded across the government. And if you are selected, you'll be given a supervisor. That supervisor may be in Washington, maybe it's an embassy overseas. And if you are selected for it, we expect you to work 10 hours per week during the following academic year. Now, in reality, it's a little bit fuzzier than that. Some projects are finite. Once you get it done, you get it done. Other projects are going to be ongoing, and you may put more work in if you would like, or you might be able to accomplish the task with a little bit less than 10 hours. If I were a student and I was looking into VSFS, I would think, well, what are my academic requirements? Can I get a little bit of academic credit out of this as well? I might want to talk to my faculty member, hey, can I get some credit? Or what would it take for me to turn this into something that I could get credit for, like an extra paper or something? It's a really, really great program. Do we have any freshmen or sophomores in the room? No, okay, I'm gonna skip this next one. For your information though, USFSIP, this is a paid 2-year summer internship. Freshmen and sophomores can apply. It's really for people who have demonstrated significant financial hardship. Okay, if you're interested in getting money to go on to graduate school from the State Department, we've got money. So I will flag for you a couple of these, take some photos if you're interested. So the first two, Pickering and Wrangell, every September is now the application period. This will pay for you to get a 2-year master's degree in a field related to foreign affairs. So it's not gonna pay for an MBA, it will not pay for a law degree, but it will pay for like a master's in public policy, something like that. After that, while you're in grad school, it's 2 paid summer internships with the State Department. If it's a Wrangell, one of them is gonna be with Congress. After that, we give you a job, and we guarantee 5 years. Actually, you guarantee us 5 years, because you're gonna give us 5 years of your life in return for that master's degree. I look at it as we're giving you a master's degree and a 5-year job, right? You have until the end of the 5 years to pass the Foreign Service testing process. So someone like me who came in without one of these fellowships, I had to pass it all before I joined. If you're a fellow, a Wrangell or a Pickering fellow, you have a full 5 years working in the State Department to pass the test.
That's a fabulous program.
It's a fabulous program. Now, most Wrangells and Pickerings pass the testing. In fact, I have one student I was working with last year, she got a Wrangell, she's from UNT, she has already passed. She's in her first year of her master's degree, she has already passed the testing. So she is good to go. And she's gonna join after the master's, and she's gonna be a full career Foreign Service officer. If you are in the IT field or computer science, anybody in here in that field? If you have friends, family members, colleagues, acquaintances, strangers on the street, tell them about this. FAIT, Foreign Affairs Information Technology Fellowship. It's the same kind of program as these, except it'll give you junior, senior year, or a master's, one or the other, and bring you into the State Department as an IT professional. This one's currently open, the deadline is February 15th. Also about this, last year we only had 40 total applicants countrywide.
Oh my goodness.
And we gave out 5 fellowships. Those are really good odds. And then finally, for after a graduate degree, so say you're finishing, you're in your 2nd year of a master's degree, and you want to come into the government in civil service. So this one's not for foreign service, this is for civil service staying in Washington. Presidential Management Fellowship Program, and it's for government-wide. Some will come into state, others will go elsewhere. You will come into the government, do 3 rotations in a 2-year period, and then you will compete for, but you'll basically essentially get placed into a civil service position. This program is super prestigious, it is competitive, but somebody ought to win it, might as well be you, right? And this is for the people who get PMFs are bound for the highest ranks of the civil service. They're gonna end up in senior executive service, there's no question. Okay. And again, all that is accessible to you, so you should apply. Because particularly, so the Wrangell and the Pickering fellowships are really diversity focused, and diversity includes geographic diversity. Going to school here, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, I don't think we've had any Pickerings or Wrangells from this institution, and so that counts for diversity. Right there, right off the bat, is just that geographic diversity. It also includes field of study diversity, and then all of the other sort of more traditional understandings of that. Okay, I'm not gonna go into great detail on this, but suffice it to say, there's money to be had if you wanna study abroad, particularly foreign languages. And so a couple just flags. Fulbright program, is everybody aware of Fulbright? So Fulbright is the US government's flagship funding for study and research abroad, and it also brings researchers into the United States. Established by Congress in like 1950 something. I think you probably have a Fulbright advisor on campus. Wrangell Summer Enrichment Program is a foreign policy. Yes.
Fulbright, they are always international.
Yes. So it's either going to be going from the United States to a foreign country, or it's going to be coming from that foreign country to the United States. Now for you all, Are you all US citizens?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So for going overseas, it's gonna be, you have to have US citizenship, but you can apply to come from Brazil to the US. Fulbright also has this English Teaching Associates program, which is great for recent graduates. It's highly competitive. You go overseas for a couple of years, a year or maybe two, and you teach English. It's really, really competitive, and it's not just meant for people who are wanting to be teachers, but it is a great experience. I mean, if you want to be a teacher, that's a really, really great experience as well. Okay, so Wrangle Summer Enrichment Program, Foreign Policy Classroom in Washington. We pay, send you to Washington, and for 6 weeks, you basically hobnob with the foreign policy establishment. So you're gonna meet with the State Department, NSA, CIA, alphabet soup. You're gonna have some classes. The classes will be held at Howard University. And it's a foreign policy classroom for 6 weeks that we pay you to participate in. And then finally, these last ones, money for study abroad for languages. So if you're interested in that, take a photo or jot those down. I don't know, do you have an international studies office here?
Mm-hmm.
So they probably have all of this information. These are really well-known scholarship programs. Okay, so for those of you who are US citizens, ¿quién habla español?
Yo hablo español.
Okay. And ¿quién fala portugués?
Eu.
Okay. ¿Qué puedes hablar? Arabic? Okay, so for Spanish, Mandarin, Portuguese, and Arabic, US citizens, sorry. Once you become a citizen, you can. Consular Fellows. This is a fabulous first-time job right out of school. It is not a career. It's a 5-year job. And what it does is basically places you in an embassy or a consulate to do all of that consular work that I was doing in Rio. And you'll be doing that side by side with our career diplomats. It's called a consular fellow, but it's a job. We pay you a salary, we pay your housing when you're overseas. If you've got family members, you've got children, we're gonna pay for those kids to go to school overseas, and we're gonna take care of you, and you're gonna work in the embassy. Basically, you will go to one place for 2 years and then a second place for 2 years. With training and sort of extensions, it's a 5-year program. Really, when you sign the contract, you say, yep, I'm gonna do this for 12 months, and if I leave before then, I'll pay you back, the State Department, for the cost of training me and all of that stuff. You don't wanna do that, too expensive, you can do anything for 12 months. We say in the contract, we want you and we will keep you for 5 years. Occasionally, we have given an extension at a later point for a 6th year. Why would you do this? Okay, you would do this because, first of all, if you're like me, when you graduate, you need a job and you need to pay bills, right? This is one option of several. There are a couple of other reasons. It's just a great job. If you're interested in federal service in any capacity, when you look at the job announcements, many of them are going to require some work experience. This is a way to get that work experience. Another thing is, if you stay the full 5 years, at the end of the 5 years, you will get what's called non-competitive eligibility, NCE. Now, this is something that you can get if you're in the Peace Corps, if you go to AmeriCorps, and basically what it means is you become a fellow for 5 years. After that, for 12 months, you can apply to any federal job that is open to not only to the public, but other jobs that are open only to federal government employees. So you're an in-house candidate. You're a Fed for hiring purposes for a full 12 months. What this does is it really expands the number of jobs that you can compete for. So it gives you the experience to make you competitive, and then it expands the pool of jobs that you can compete for. I cannot emphasize what a great deal NCE is if you're interested in government hiring. A full third of our fellows have gone on to federal careers. Okay, and if you're gonna do this, you can get online. I'm not gonna go through this because we have other things to talk about, but if you wanna be a fellow, you can go, you in theory could go home today, apply, go take a test, and you would know that day if you passed step 1 or not this step. This is a program that is definitely accessible to you if you are in school. My son is a senior. He has passed number 1 and number 2. He's waiting to take his Mandarin test. So it's something that is within your reach as an undergraduate. Okay? Questions about that? Okay, civil service. Civil service, remember, working domestically, probably in Washington. There are very few entry-level jobs available. And that's why you might be a fellow, or join the Peace Corps, or join AmeriCorps, or go be a banker, or go work in the hotel industry, or do these other things and get a little bit of experience and then apply for these. There may be some, I don't want to entirely discourage you, you can look. A couple of tips. So you're going to go to the State Department website, find what's available, and then it will lead you to USA Jobs. When you're applying for these, you want to make sure that you read the job announcement in its entirety, and they're endless. There are little pluses that say read more. Make sure you click on that, because a lot of times the best information is buried in that location. You need to tailor your resume to the job. So if you are serious about applying for civil service, I don't know, do you have a federal resume expert in your office? Go to Career Services and talk to somebody about building that federal resume, because it's different than private sector. Private sector resumes are going to be, you know, a page, 2 pages, depending on your experience. Your federal resume is going to be like 15 pages, 4 to 20 pages. Actually, probably 4 to 16 is going to be roughly what you're going to see if you have an undergraduate degree and no work experience. If you've got work experience, you know, you're definitely getting up there in the 10 to 20 page. Okay, and those are the categories of jobs that we have at the State Department. Probably the ones that you will see most frequently on our website are going to be foreign affairs officers, maybe IT, but probably mostly foreign affairs officers are what you'll see. And then you'll see a bunch in this sort of administration, which are like real estate, realtor appraisers, and all kinds of crazy stuff that you would never imagine the government would be hiring for, and we do.
Is the public affairs and foreign affairs the same, but one is in the country, in US, and the other?
These are all going to be domestic because they're all civil service.
All domestic.
Yeah, so the foreign affairs officer, an example might be to be an analyst on the Russia desk. And what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that there's a balance of foreign service, new perspective coming in every 2 to 3 years versus somebody staying there and getting that expertise. It may be somebody in the Oceans Environment and Science Bureau who has a PhD in energy policy. It can be really highly skilled, or it can be a little bit more general. That's going to be in the foreign affairs. Questions about that? Other? Okay, foreign service. Remember, you're going to join the program and you're going to say, yes, I am available to travel and to live and work anywhere in the world, anywhere that the government in its infinite wisdom chooses to send me. Now, it's a little bit more flexible than the military. So the military is a little more rigid. We have a little bit more control over where we're going to go. There's a set of rules which govern where we need to go. So we can't spend our careers only in Tokyo, Paris, London, and Rome. We have what's called fair share. We each have to shoulder a fair share of the burden of staffing hardship posts. But you know what? There are a lot of hardship posts out there that are, I don't know, they're not really hardships. Beijing's a hardship. It's considered a hardship, and there are reasons for that, legitimate reasons for that. I still went, I took my family, I was happy to do that. But worldwide availability is a requirement. And at the end of the day, needs of the service prevail. So you can be directed to an assignment. Okay, so foreign service, think about 2 groups. We have generalists and we have specialists. Specialists are people who are bringing in a specialized skill set, and they're going to do that specialist job everywhere they go. And some of them are quite specialized, like physicians and engineers. So a physician is gonna go from here to here to here to here being a physician. They're not all of a sudden gonna become the human resources officer, right? And vice versa, the human resources specialist is gonna do HR, and not all of a sudden be the doctor. Thank goodness, right? Now, within specialists, they're gonna rise in rank because they are going to have greater levels of complexity. They're gonna be managing larger operations, so they will rise in rank. And they're gonna move every 2 to 3 years, and they're always gonna do that specialist function. For the most part, a specialist is someone who has a job function, which is really looking inward into the embassy, keeping that embassy running. There's some minor exceptions to that, but generally speaking, that's what it is. They are still in the Foreign Service, they are still in the diplomatic corps, and they are still working in that foreign culture, and they are engaging with foreign nationals. In fact, one of our specialists, general services officers who do logistics, typically are those who are gonna have the largest staff of local employees in the embassy. And most of those employees are not gonna speak very good English because it's a skill set that doesn't require English language. It's gonna be like drivers and gardeners and movers and facilities maintenance personnel. And so the general services officer is gonna acquire those foreign language skills and is going to be managing that local staff. So don't mistake the fact that they're looking inward into the embassy as they're not in the foreign country, because they aren't, they very much are. For those of you who don't have a specialized degree, like engineering, I would still encourage you to look at and read the descriptions of these specialists, because some of them really may be suitable for you and applicable to you. Don't discount them. Read through them. Some of them, obviously, if you don't have a medical degree, you're not going to apply to be a doctor. So you can discount those. But I would draw your attention in particular to the law enforcement and to the administration categories. You can find full descriptions of those online. Any questions? Okay. The way we hire for these is remember when you went to careers.state.gov, keep me informed feature? You signed up to get job notices. And we're gonna send you a job notice, and then you're gonna read the instructions and you're gonna follow it. It's basically resume based in the first step, okay? But you have to wait for us to seek. And typically for most of these specialists, it's gonna be 1 to 3 times per year that we're recruiting for those. So you kind of have to wait for that announcement to come out. Okay, Foreign Service officers, these are also known as Foreign Service generalists. These are interchangeable terms. I'm an FSO, I'm a Consular Affairs FSO. We have 5 tracks. You have to pick which one you want to be before you apply. So there are some ways that you can find out about what these are. I'll give you a brief snapshot, but there's a book called Inside a U.S. Embassy that you can read. You can probably get that. I don't know if, do you have one of those?
I don't think we have one in our office.
There might be one in the library.
The library.
You can find them on Amazon. If you can't find one, you'll contact me and I'll let you know how to get one. You can watch a video that's on my Facebook page where I talk about these in excruciating detail. Get your popcorn, it's really long, I'm sorry, it's like 50 minutes long, so get your popcorn. I have props though, so, you know, it's an advertisement, I do wear costumes. And we have a lot of information online about each one of these where we talk about what each one entails at the entry, mid, and senior level. In a nutshell though, consular affairs, visas, and services to Americans, that's what I do, and you've heard extensively about that. And I would love to say that it's the best one because I am passionate about it, but it really depends on what you're interested in and what you're suited for. Public diplomacy. These are officers that go to the foreign country and they're going to tell America's story to the foreign public. So they're going to be the press spokesperson, they will run our social media campaigns, they will get out and speak to groups of students, business people, what have you, really explaining the United States to a public audience. Some of it's on the soft side, soft power, if you will. They're doing cultural programming to showcase America's diversity, America's talent, America's richness. They might bring musicians and academicians and athletes to represent America. That's the sort of the soft side. The other side of it is they're the spokesperson. So they're going to defend and explain U.S. policy. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not easy. It can be very, very challenging. My husband was the press officer in Taiwan at a time when we were in the middle of a trade war with Taiwan over beef, U.S. beef. And he had to talk about maximum residual levels of ractopamine in U.S. beef. And he had to do that in Mandarin. So you need to have some foreign language aptitude if you're going to be a public diplomacy officer. Management, these are the people who are managing all of those specialists that we talked about. And on top of that, there's an external facing component to them, to this job. And the best illustration of this is if you think about Russia. About a year and a half ago, a little bit less, the United States and Russia got involved in a diplomatic dispute, which involved Russia telling the United States, you've got to close your consulate in St. Petersburg, and you have to downsize your staff across the mission by 750 personnel, right? It's a political dispute, diplomatic dispute. So the management counselor, I was not there at the time, but I have worked in Moscow, so I know the lay of the land. I can surmise. The management counselor, who previously had been working on making sure we all had our stuff, that the housing was there, that the air conditioners were working, all that kind of stuff, the bills got paid. Now all of a sudden that management counselor has to go, oh, wait a minute, okay, Russia, that facility that we have in St. Petersburg, we have a 99-year lease on that. So Russia, are you going to buy us out of that lease, or are you going to pay for it? What's going to happen? Because if it's still ours, under the Vienna Convention, you, the host government, have to provide for the security of that facility. So are you going to put guards around it? Because you're making me fire all of mine, right? And what about the employees? You say I have to downsize by 750. Okay, I am a good employer, so I'm going to pay those employees a severance under their contract. But hey, Russia, since you're forcing me to fire them, are you going to reimburse me for that severance? So all of these issues that are really political are now dumped into the lap of the management counselor, which is why that person is a generalist. They've got to have those skills. Okay, and finally, economic and political I will talk about together. These are officers that are going to go to the foreign country, and one will work in the realm of economics, and the other will work in the realm of
Politics.
Yes, you're still awake, you're still with me, almost through. So they're going to go to the foreign country, and they are going to learn what's happening. And they will do this by meeting with people. They're going to meet with a political leader, maybe a businessman or businesswoman, educators, man on the street, and they're going to be analyzing and having meetings. Now, this is different than public diplomacy, because public diplomacy is out there presenting and really in the public. The political and economic officers, for the most part, are having what we would consider to be private meetings, sort of individual, small group meetings. They're going to learn what's going on, and they're going to analyze it. Does it matter to the U.S.? Because frankly, not everything that happens overseas matters to the U.S. But does it matter? If so, how? What should our policy be? So they will write reports. Some of them are reports, such and such happened. Sometimes it's such and such happened, and here is my 1 or 2 sentence observation or comment about it. Maybe it's something that's weaving together a lot of different sources and it's analytical, saying, here's this emerging trend in this country, the U.S. has to get ahead of it, this is what our policy should be. And it's this reporting and this analysis which gets sent into Washington and sets the stage, it sets that narrative context for our policymakers to make decisions. And as you become in the Foreign Service, as you rise, or in the civil service, even you come in at the entry level, as you rise in your career, You may become that policymaker who is making the decisions, but you're reading all of this information that is being provided from around the world. So when you are thinking about the Foreign Service, if you want to influence policy, this is how it works for influencing policy. At a later point, you're probably putting together sort of an action memo for your policymaker, saying this is what the issue is, here's what the recommendation is, and then the policymaker will say agree, disagree, discuss. And that's kind of how that policy gets made. And sometimes it's going through an interagency process. So if you want to influence policy, if you think you're going to come into the Foreign Service and you're going to immediately shape U.S. foreign policy immediately, and you're going to change our policy to whatever, China, Brazil, Russia, UK, that's not how it works. It's drip, 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 drip. You are filling the bucket, right? And that bucket is that set of understanding and ideas and recommendations for what our policy should be. If you really and truly want to immediately change our policy and foreign policy, make $1 bazillion, donate to a political campaign and become the Secretary of State. Otherwise, you're going to be part of this. You're going to be a cog in the wheel of the foreign policy establishment. So it's really important that you have that understanding. But you can influence. I mean, and I could give you various examples of how I have personally been involved in shaping policy. Okay, but this is how it works to become an FSO. FSOT is a test you take at a testing center. You can take it in February, June, or October. And you can take it once a year. You can take it as many times as you want, once a year. If you pass it, great. If you don't pass it, if you fail it, it's fine. Take it again next year. Live your life in between. Increase your knowledge. You've taken it. You know what's on it. You have an idea. You can figure out where you need to improve. It's free. Actually, I lie. It's not free. It's $5 for the administrative fee at the testing center, I think. It's 180 minutes. You go, you take it. See if you pass it. We have online preparation materials. There's an app that you can get old questions, and you go take it. So the next time we're going to give it is February. Like January 29th or February 6th or something like that. It's just a week-long window. You register in that month before. So you should go home, look at the dates, start looking at the testing materials. If you don't think you're ready in February, take it in June. Don't go beyond that. If you're interested in the Foreign Service, take it. I took it the first time, 20 years old, sophomore in college. I passed it. So maybe you can, right? If you don't, average age coming in is 32, plenty of time. We'll take it to your 59 and a half. Take it again next year. Okay, if you do pass it, you'll get notified in about 3 weeks after you take it, you passed. You're given 6 questions that you have to answer and 2 weeks to answer them, and you write answers to these 6 questions. 250 words apiece. You're college students. You got to be able to write up 6 250-word answers in like, I don't know, what does it take you? 45 minutes? No, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours. It's not a lot of time. Okay, you write the answers and you submit them. And then the State Department is going to cogitate and evaluate, and they're going to look at your test scores here in that step 1. They're going to look at your answers to those questions and your resume, your work experience, okay? And so this step is where it's difficult to pass through if you don't have work experience, which is why you become a consular fellow, or you join a Peace Corps, or you work for AmeriCorps, or you go become a Wall Street banker. If you become a Wall Street banker, you should know that if you join the government after that, you're gonna take a pay cut. Just the way it works. But it's richly rewarding, and we have great benefits. Okay, so they're gonna cogitate over that. And eventually they're gonna tell you pass or fail. If you fail, you have to start all over again over here the next year. If you pass, you will be invited to schedule an oral assessment. Before you go to that, I get notified when everybody's scheduled, and I will reach out to you and I will prep you for this and we'll get you ready, okay? If you pass it, they'll tell you that day. If you don't pass it, you start over at the beginning, okay? This, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is dreadful. No, it's 180 minutes of your time right there. 3 hours to write your essays, 1 day there. It's not really that big a deal, okay? And it doesn't cost you anything. This costs you to go to Washington, because we're not gonna pay for that, you have to pay for that. All right, if you pass, you start and you get your security clearances, and they're gonna make sure that you're suitable to be a diplomat, and then they're gonna put you on a list. That list, the career register, that's, at that point, it's based, your place on the list is gonna be based on your scores through the whole process. It is also going to be, do we have any vets in here? Okay, so if you were deployed when you were discharged, you would have been given either 5 or 10 preference points. We'll convert those into points that match our scale, and then we'll bump you up a little bit higher on that list. Also, if you have certain languages, we will give you extra points here. These are languages that we call critical languages for recruitment purposes. Now, this is not a value judgment about what languages are more important than others or are better than others. It's simply a calculation based on whether or not we can recruit enough people with that language to fill the jobs that we have, okay? So, currently on that list we have Arabic, Mandarin, Korean, Pashto, Urdu, Farsi, Hindi, 2 others that I'm forgetting. Maybe Swahili, a couple others. Russian is not on there. For those of you who are gonna ask me, Russian is not on there because we get enough Russian speakers to fill the positions that we have, okay? Now, if you're on that list, we'll go down the list when we're hiring. So if we're gonna have a class, we're gonna say, hey, you're at the top, and we start going all the way down. You can be on that list for 18 months, and if we don't call you, your candidacy expires, okay? Before you go, you wanna get my contact information? Do you have it? Okay, so here, we'll skip over this just 1 second because somebody's gotta go to class. This is how you're gonna get in touch with me. Take a photo. So this is how you get in touch with me. I am based in Austin. I do cover the state of Texas, and I'm gonna be in this job until summer 2020. Perform some due diligence, read the website, look around, check it out, but then when you've got questions, feel free to reach out to me. Somebody's gonna ask me this, you wanna be an FSO, and what do you want, how are you gonna prepare? This is what you're gonna do. Make sure you know how to write. Make sure that you understand that there are different audiences for your writing and different styles. Public policy writing is different than academic writing. You need to know the difference. You will not pass through our testing if you're not a strong writer. So while you're in school, when you walk into your classroom, leave the ego at the door and get as much feedback on your writing as you can get. It's only going to serve you well, regardless of what profession you pursue. If you want to join the State Department, please know your geography. We are diplomats, we represent the United States, we go overseas, we have 275 posts in the world. I'm not asking that you know where each and every single one of those is, but you ought to know where countries of the world are. There is a website called lizardpoint.com that has quizzes and whatnot to help you quiz on geography. I'm sure there are other ones out there. I'm only endorsing that one because somebody told me it exists. I verified that it exists, and I'm too lazy to do the research to find other ones, but I'm sure you can find other ones. Practice your oral communication skills. You have to be able to have the confidence to speak in front of a group. Now, you don't have to be like a master TED talker. I'm living proof that you do not have to be a master public speaker, but you do have to have the confidence to be able to get up in front of a room. You also need to be able to brief someone in an articulate way and in a concise way. It's not uncommon for a senator of the United States or a member of Congress to travel to our posts, and we have to brief them on what's going on in our country. In the country, not our country, in the country where we're posted. So you have to be able to do that, and you won't pass our tests if you can't. Read a daily newspaper. I don't know what the Corpus Christi newspaper is. I kind of doubt it's sufficient from an international news perspective. I don't know, I have not read it. International Herald Tribune, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, those types of publications that have lots of international news, you should read those. Read opinion writers from not only the opinion you agree with, but the opposing opinion. We are diplomats. We swear an oath to the Constitution, not to a political party. At least skim a weekly periodical. If you are really serious and you want to be an FSO, you should get in the habit of reading something. Foreign Affairs magazine, something. Over 90% of Foreign Service officers are going to tell you to read The Economist. That's the one. If you're going to pick one, read The Economist. They don't pay me to say that, and I do not pay them. I pay my property taxes and I read it at the library. I do not pay the enormous fees. For students, I understand you can get on Amazon Prime if you're a member, and you can get either a discount or free for The Economist, but you should read that one. Okay, somebody's gonna say, well, should I get this master's or that master's? Should I go there? Should I go there? Should I get that language or that language? And I'm gonna say, do what you love, do what develops you in those 13 dimensions, because you may or you may not pass through all of our steps. And you don't wanna make a choice doing something you're not interested in, because you think it's gonna get you in the Foreign Service. What if it doesn't, and then you're stuck with something you're not interested in, right? That is not a rational decision. Do something that interests you. And again, I would point you back to those 13 dimensions when you're looking at positions, not only in the State Department, but elsewhere. Can I get a sense, what are your majors?
I'm doing Masters in Public Administration.
Okay.
Economics.
We've got econ track officers.
Emergency Management.
Okay. Oh, consular. Yay. Okay.
Business Management.
Business management.
Business Management.
Okay. So as you go out and you start doing your job searches, as for State Department or otherwise, look at the dimensions and think to yourself, what are the experiences that you have? What are the skills that you have? And start to think about how you can frame your accomplishments and your experiences in terms of those dimensions and those skills. It might be very helpful to you because as you're putting together your resume or you're getting ready for an interview, think about, okay, leadership skills. We have a whole definition of it. What are the things in my life that I have done, that I have accomplished, that prove that I have leadership skills? Not only, oh yeah, I kind of need those. No, think about, I have specific, concrete accomplishments. And those accomplishments may have been in the context of your classes or in your life experience and your work experience. But think in terms of the skills and the accomplishments that you have which prove that you've got those skills. It's just a useful way to start thinking about your resume and your interviews as you go forward. Finally, this is me. You should feel free to reach out to me. If you send me a message, please do it by email rather than Facebook, because I can keep track of it a little bit better that way. I will answer you on Facebook, but I'm a product of my generation, and I use email more than I use Facebook. It kind of confuses me when you send me a message and then I click and it disappears. I don't know what to do with it. If you like my page, if you're like me, like my page, Washington Watches, so I like to get likes. And so DIR Texas, that's Diplomat in Residence Texas at state.gov. It's not DIRT Texas.
What's Dirt, Texas?
Facebook, it's Diplomat in Residence Texas or at DIR Texas, and you can find me there. I do post all of my events. You're welcome to come to additional information sessions at a later point, because I guarantee you're gonna walk out and you're gonna go, she gave me so much information, I forgot half of what she just said. That's normal, human nature. You can come to anything that you want. If it looks like it's a hosted event, contact the hosts to make sure it's okay that you attend. But as far as I'm concerned, you're always welcome. I do have office hours when I'm not on the road. And they're drop-in, but they're also call-in. So my office is in Austin, but there are instructions on here under the events page on how you can call in to have a consultation. And it's basically, there's a number you call. If I answer, great. If I don't, leave a very clear message with your callback number, and I will call you back in the order that I've gotten the calls and in the order that people are coming into my office. Typically, it's gonna be pretty quick when I call you back. But I do have people leave messages that are undecipherable, so please do leave a clear voicemail message so that I can call you back. And that's all I have for you today. I'm happy to stick around and answer some questions. I know I have probably dulled you into insensitivity, and, you know, I probably just like too much information, but I'm happy to take questions if you've got them.
What are the opportunities for me as an international student? For example, I would be interested in the foreign affairs, in the political area.
All of our employment opportunities require US citizenship, as do internships and the study abroad opportunities. Except if you, for foreign nationals, you can apply for Fulbright. But that's, I'm afraid, pretty much that's it. It's the federal government